Out of the blue, my 4-year-old daughter shouts, "Grandma turned already past. Get the hell out of here." We were staying at my in-laws' house, and it was around 10 p.m. I was puzzled and asked, "What do you mean?" "Come outside." Mommy, my daughter, grabbed my hand and led me out. As she told her story, I was speechless. There was always something unknowable about her, and in that moment terror gripped me. I would never have expected that person to be caught up in something like this. I fear human beings now more than I ever did. I was 34 when I met Galen, who is 4 years my junior, and we married a year later. We built a new house literally 10 minutes down the road from his parents and began life as newlyweds. "From now on, Muriel, we will lead a happy life together," he said. He was very sweet, and his parents, who discovered him, were so lovely. Galen strives each day to be the next in line of his father's company. I quit my full-time job to go part-time on a very flexible schedule in order to support him. And my sister-in-law, Lydia, who laughs and snorts it out. Working part-time? Isn't that just asking Galen to coast? We didn't used to get along in the beginning days of our wedding. Lydia is in my age group yet remains single, living alone. In my opinion, she seems like a working woman. I looked up to her and idolized her life. I even wondered if I still stayed on as a full-time employee, would have ended up like her. Galen there arriving, sighing heavily as if out of breath. I, Lydia, breathe in a deep tone and say her line with intensity, "Run an errand for me." So then I text Galen, "Can we get ice cream?" "You can spend the change however you want," she explained. He does, and it is the usual discussion we hear when they all come together at the in-laws. Lydia has always spoiled Galen, and though in his upper 30s now, rarely contradicts her. As an only child myself, I kinda wish for the same relationship. If only Lydia was a bit nicer to me, I wished. But she is often harsh, much to my surprise. It was a little intrusive sometimes, and she stopped by our house once or twice when my husband wasn't home. "Muriel, you've got some hair on the floor. Today has been a work-filled day, and I haven't had the time to commit. I was going to spend time cleaning up later." "You work there part-time, right? Quit the excuses and do it." She said Galen is not clean at the same time as living in dirt. I sighed and did what she asked. Buzzing in, marching into the kitchen to help herself to half-prepped dishes and tasting them without being asked as I scrubbed. "Ah, the flavor is so bland. You would be like, how can you make something this bad?" "It's not finished yet." I bet you soon enough she would say what a pig Galen had been for marrying someone like me. Was never interested in my side of the story. Galen name was all one would hear. Honestly, I was bad at cleaning house anyways, so in a way it felt kind of hopeless. But then there were some things I just wouldn't stand for. "So you just have fancy clothes, huh? And here you are so plain in your undertones." She would open my closet without permission and look into it. I would plead to Lydia, "Lydia, please up, stop." I would beg for her to listen, but she rarely cared, and usually had a wicked smile that made me wonder if there was some kind of self-satisfaction in making my life hell. Lydia EVN, LOKSINTHECLOSET. I have tried to explain it to her over and over, but she is not getting there. "Can't you talk to her?" When my husband came through the door, I cried out to him. His response was off-kilter. "Really? Maybe she just wants to see what my wife looks like," he added. And yet this person has gone on after we spoke. Galen letting me down was disheartening. As if that wasn't enough, Lydia was more impossible than ever. But then came a year into our marriage, with the birth of our daughter Alina, and things got even worse. My sister-in-law was frustrated with us. Our daughter cried on, and she gave me a dirty look. She cries so much. It's your poor parenting. And to think you had a girl. Do you know that your status is an eldest son's wife? She would start commenting about anything, and eventually she would spit out harsh words. You are at fault. I did this for the family. My husband should have noticed, and yet he was ever too happy to be distracted. I would say, Lydia can be bitchy lately, and honestly, it's hard. There's really nobody to blame but you, Mariel. Are you suggesting that Lydia is TGHICOICLONE? He'd respond, people never actually said that, but this is how my mind would interpret it if they did. Anytime they actually addressed his behavior, the performer would always side with Lydia. I only felt more disappointed in Galen as time went on. Can we continue like this forever too? I wondered. The idea of being divorced swirled around my head, but as a child from separated parents who knew all too well the isolation that came with having only one parent around, I thought better. I just knew I didn't want my daughter to feel that same way, and so began out of office. Still, I survived. My in-laws were watching over me. But when my daughter, Alina, was about 6 months old, I lost that suddenly. She passed away from an illness. Her departure, however, the brutality of it all matched by its abruptness, had everyone flailing to deal with what they were feeling. Galen said, I want to see Dad because I am trouble for a dad, but it understood. I responded, let me know if you need anything. Throughout all this, my husband was visiting his father's house, days at a time, and me alone with our daughter. At times he came home at night. I asked about the reason. Dad is lonely on his own. Yet you also see your dad at work, don't you? Can you ask Lydia to handle family business? I suggested. You're quite heartless. You would want me to leave Dad alone even though he is lonely. He retorted. That's not what I said, I protested. Well, I started by saying that I wanted more of this delightful, lovely creature, and not you. It still struck me. Parents need nurturing too. I remained silent after that. Meanwhile, years rolled on and Alina turned 4. Galen visited his father every day and came home only late at night as always. I turned around and confronted him. Galen, you've been hell busy recently, hey? It must be harrowing for you to continuously monitor the health of your dad, right? I can take your spot, I said. However, he insisted, don't visit my dad's house. Lydia would not approve, and I don't want any unnecessary beef. I was suspicious of his insistence that I stay out of the family house. But I decided to spurn his advice and go visit my father-in-law on my own. I'm so glad I did. To my surprise, my father-in-law answered with a smile. Cooking classes and loving it, he said with a smile. He wasn't at all like the Galen she'd begin with. And I was truly stunned by a remark that my father-in-law happened to make very accidentally. Several weeks later, my husband suddenly said, Notified data set changed. How about all of us just head on down to my dad's and eat dinner? I hesitated, thinking, my dad hates that, but Lydia doesn't like when I go to your dudes. It raised a red flag with me because it was unexpected. He continued, it's fine. Lydia invited us earlier, so are you going to go? Hurry up and get ready. Galen was clearly confused. Though this wasn't the norm, I went along with it, and we, my daughter, himself and me, made our way over to his dad's house. When I walked in the door of my in-laws' house, a fabulous smell enveloped me. Lydia, my brother Edmund's wife, greeted me with a smile. Mariel, welcome. Finn was looking out for you, so I've already started dinner, she said, inviting me in and doling out candy and trinkets to Alina. Surprised at her reply, I had been expecting the usual sharp comments from Lydia that normally would follow any mention of this kind of topic. Still, I remained cautious. I should not place my guard off. Perhaps she will sabotage me with a few kitchen witchery, I mused. My consternation was thankfully unnecessary, however. Galen said you liked certain foods. I hope you find them to your taste, she said. The table, to my greatest delight, was a homegrown mass of different kinds what looks like all one's favorite foods. Grateful, I replied, thank you. But still confusion scrawled all over my feelings. Lydia added playfully, don't fret, no poison or anything. Luckily, I retorted, I never thought that way. The other, I am sorry, Lydia said, out of the blue. Mariel, I am so sorry that I have been such a bitch to you this whole time. You do not have to forgive me, but I hope we can enumerate from here on out, she said. Though I was still angry, I opted not to fight back any more. Returning the smile to Lydia, I wanted to cross that bridge. Search for, oh cool, because we are the same age, please can we talk about everything, she coyly suggested. Oh, how about an overnight stay today? She continued. I showed up with nothing, I replied. You can put on my makeup, right? Let's do that. Galen, it's fine, isn't it? She asked. Caught in Lydia's rhythm, I could not decline. It seemed like a matter of, and so it starts, I figured. So I gave in to her invitation. She was an excellent conversationalist, and before I knew it, we were having a lot of fun. We fell asleep, and those hours became the new day with Father, and the ward for a long time had to get used to us, her family sleeping in her room next to Mother-in-law's portrait. I guess I misread Lydia. No, I thought, for the future, if there is one, be kinder. That's great. I would enjoy seeing you two play nice, Galen added. I lay in the dark with our daughter snuggled between us as we gently drifted off into sleep. But it came in the dead of night when Alina screamed at the top of her voice, waking me up. Mom, we have to GTAUTOFHERERIGHTAO. That is what Grandma, who has died and passed away, said. Her voice nearly startled me into sitting up. What's going on? I asked. Still groggy, I sought affirmation from my daughter. Alina was about 6 months old when my mother-in-law passed away and can't remember anything. Had Alina still been half asleep, I would have understood, but she was fully woke with eyes as wide as saucers and wearing a look of urgency. We will die if we remain here as such, Alina said with an insistent pull on my hand to follow. I looked up to see where my husband had gone, but he was nowhere in sight. He should have been asleep. Where in the world could he have been right now? I thought. But that wasn't it at the moment. Because I believed in the Alina before me, flawed. My own daughter was in possession of a strange power. While all my BFFs were popping up pregnant, she was successfully prognosticating baby genders in their bellies left and right. Example, I also have been warned about when Galen will be injured. Although Galen did hurt himself by slipping on the stairs, he was just glad it had been a relatively easy sprain. Though afterwards when Galen and Lydia began to avoid talking to Alina, simply saying she's creepy. I figured that was a normal thing for people to feel, so we kept this power only between Alina and me. Grandpa has to come away with us too, said Alina, standing outside her grandfather's chamber. She went in and woke him up gently. Grandpa, wake up quickly. Please, we will explain later. But just go with us and get away from this. My father-in-law startled into consciousness, but also confusion when he heard our voices. After a lot of reluctance, he finally decided to go out when Alina said, Grandma told us to. As we got to the door, I noticed my husband's and sister-in-law's shoes were mysteriously gone. Also, both of their cars were not in the parking lot. Did what Alina said / Jody remember have anything to do with both of them? I wondered. We then agreed to walk back to my place. It would be a 1-hour walk even for an adult, and yet only car journey of no more than 10 minutes away. I rang my mother to come and get us. When we drove up in front of my house with our lights on, I saw that the light was still burning. Even to my surprise, Galen and Lydia's car had been parked there also. "Mom, I'm sorry to ask this, but can we stay at your house tonight?" Something felt off, and going into the house as would not be smart. So we ended up staying at my mom's house that night. Before bed, my brain and eyes were on FULILRT. I could no tea pass out. It sat with me as I woke up in the morning. DEP. I took my mother's car and went by myself to the home of an in-law. To my horror, there was not a grand and imposing house with all the trappings of opulence standing before me, but instead just its own smoldering ashes and wooden corpse. No, that couldn't be right, I thought. Several fire trucks, police cars, and ambulances lined up in front of the in-laws' home, surrounded by curious onlookers on the other side of the yellow tape. Galen and Lydia was on the phone with firemen and the police explaining what had happened. I disappeared into the dense crowd of spectators, escaping notice from them, and watched as everything unraveled before my eyes. Emergency vehicles left after a short time and spectators went about their day. Where there had once been a throng of people in the yard, now they were gone. I stood, or rather lurked, in the shadow of a nearby car as my husband talked frustrations with his sister from where they taped off the area, having fuck all else to do but stand there gawping at what was now nothing bigger than a matchstick dollhouse. ALADD, I have twins with autism, and here's what you need to know: tasks for twins. It really went up in flames. I needed the leather binding that used to form Alina and Marielle, but back when they were worthwhile. If they do, it's a miracle. Medical personnel won't save them. I grab his arm and spit. Sleep with her tonight, because I swear to God that when this all blows over one day soon, it's going away, SEN. And then we're through, but not the way you think. Those nightmare words repeated in my brain and sounded worse, pulling the feeling right out of me until I said to myself, well, that was stupid, while holding onto a wall as though it were real life itself. As Galen and Lydia conversed, though, laughter regarding their collective sinister plans. Well, Dad probably bid it as well. Whatever inheritance was coming is ours next week. Your company will be all mine. I figured, what despicable people. I can't forgive them. I was shaking all over with fear and rage. When they finally got back to my place, I sprinted out ahead of them, drove home in record time, packed up everything that was mine, and was at the safe house with much help from Mom. I returned there alongside daughter and father-in-law. So I told my father-in-law about what had happened at the in-laws. Listen up, there is something you should know. Oh my God, what has happened? No, I won't forgive him. His face turned into a mask of shock and rage. We would follow through, we said to each other. My son and I had chosen retribution for your father and aunt. I left Alina with my mom and stood on the front step of our house with his dad that night. I raised my hand for the intercom, but quickly retracted it. The thing that I like the most about a YouTube bro is it makes me remember to clean my own fucking house. Like Jameson, this was your Dan home. But personally, I decided to unlock the front door. I heard a rattling sound, and there was Galen peeking discreetly from the inside. He went white as a sheet and scampered back into the chamber. He came back a few minutes later with Lydia. "Why are you here?" she asked, looking ashen. However, just as her eyes met ours, she turned and raced back to my father-in-law, where she clung on as if relieved. "Thank goodness you're alive. You were nowhere to be found, and they said you weren't in the ashes. We were so worried. Yep, I have been praying since you know that you all must be safe," Galen went on teasingly while also hugging me. I just push away his arms and walk a step or two back from my husband. "Hands off. Alina's your mom did that so we could find each other." "Mom." But she died years ago, he said. Exactly. Don't spout nonsense. Is Alina's cryptic powers going to be up for debate once more? That is really shocking. Neither of them wrinkled their noses, but they did shake Alina's words from side to side. Well, fine. Let's go inside for now. Come on, this is my home after all. Your dad's here. I shoved the kids out of my way and coaxed father-in-law into the house. When we all entered, Galen followed and put a hand on my shoulder as he said, "Wait. Did I not tell you never to fondle me so familiarly? Are you having a hysterical moment, Maria? Is it that your hormones are out of kilter? This is why women in their 40s get a bad rep." Lydia laughed, teasing me as she always does. The meekness of the apology from a day earlier gone. Even under the watch of my father-in-law, my bitch spilled her true gut full of malice. That is enough to piss any person off. You two siblings are behind this fire incident, right? But he really nailed it when my husband and sister-in-law took the stand. Wait, there's nothing but evidence stating the contrary. It's impossible. Galen, although anxious for it, to nothing could be stood his denial. Lydia was looking as calm and collected as ever. Mariel, really? Suspecting your own family? You clearly have an issue. You grow up being raised by a single parent. You don't have that kind of love. Do I really mean this? Well, yes and no. It depends on evidence. This morning, early in the mornings, I overheard both of you were talking about that burned house. I said this while I looked at them both. Huh, eavesdropping much? The mad laughter had been replaced in Lydia with contempt. When I have to listen from there, who the fuck is going to believe it anyway? Yeah, what Lydia said. Who do you think we are, minced meat diesel-fueled Gia fucking tank and Hagbard sirens for the cavalry wagon? The police won't take that sketchy story. My husband joined. This was probably a long governing dynamic. Is this your voice? I reached into my pocket and drew out the recording on my smartphone. The recording was of their conversation with this morning. Why are you doing this? I demanded. I pretended to be asleep again, but when Alina did that whole wake me in the middle of the night, and neither you or Lydia were there, I smelt the rat. I thought I was going to record it wrong, but luckily the tape was rolling. There was a little gap, but we could tell that the voices were coming from you too. When they heard the audio file, Galen and Lydia went silent. I will report this to the police. Surely they'll believe it. Wait a minute. Galen objected. You all got out without a scratch, so what's the problem? What are you saying? You put us in danger, and look at your dad's house. That is a crime. Do you understand me? Now I was really riled, and I started arguing with my husband about his ridiculous claims. And this includes you, Lydia. Pero otra persona te va a hacer pagar por eso. How did you conduct such a deep investigation into this? Galen stammered. Lydia, what do we do? We're caught. He looked to his sister for help in his panic, but Lydia did no more than glare at me. Do not grow cocky, you wailing woman. She attacked, her hostility toward me plain to see, but I didn't have time for debate with this woman. Here we go. I took a deep breath and stared them in the eyes again. Waited out for the fuzz to cool. Remarry your mistress this time as if she hadn't been de facto eating off of Mama and Papa's plate. A correspondent asked cryptically. Galen stuttered his way through a lackluster response before trailing off. You can be silent when it stops mattering, as you think, but there is proof. This woman, right? I waved a photo I had taken that day at them. Maybe it was a lack of support that sapped Galen's strength, prompting the affirmative head shake. In reality, I had been suspecting that my boyfriend was cheating on me for a while and decided to investigate little by little. How long have you known? He asked, defeated. Well, it all began from when you started saying that you were checking on your dad, and after then onwards, late-night returns become constant, or we should say they never ended till last long. Although when your dad said something, I became very sure that Galen had told me not to go his dad's house, but I went anyway. One time my father-in-law had told me, "You are the only one who will come to visit." It was a shock to me, who believed that Galen visited his father often. Photo of Lydia also makes it seem as though Galen, you have her blessing on your affair. I called them out on it with the proof in their face. So what? So this is one more example of how you're to blame for being cheated on. Detesting the whole affair, and well it knew what was going on, Lydia sneered. You have no charm at all. Wanting to collect as much evidence as possible, pictures showing the affair partner's pregnancy and a picture of Galen with his arm around her pregnant belly just months before gave way to more recent images of themselves together walking their newborn baby. Mariel, it was not what you think. And then finally, my husband sounded defensive and tried to rationalize his behavior. There is a good reason. Before I could swat them all aside, my father-in-law, who had been standing by silent this whole time, stepped forward and stood like a guardian over both my husband and Lydia. What are you both doing? I spent my whole life bullying Mariel, cheating on her, and even put our lives in danger. What's your intention? My husband and sister-in-law were left dumbfounded at his angry demeanor. Dad, listen to me. It's not as bad as it looks. As for that house, I was just view house crazy. You were out of your mind? Well, Galen, that is a bolder statement. But how does that explain away endangering lives? My father-in-law was now positively quaking with rage. This house may not be new, but it is still our home. We cherish it. Well, now, not only is it destroyed, but you have also tried to hurt my family or family. You too disgust me, and I am utterly disappointed. I can't overlook this. My husband and, of course, Lydia were shocked at their father's response. All right then, we are done here. Mariel, what do you mean? Please, we can work this out, a desperate Galen begged, but it was too late. I was resolute. Dad, I appreciate you for standing up with me in front of the... I am going to file for divorce right away. In the meantime, try to take care of Alina. My husband, in what seems like complete despair and devastation, looked at me while grasping for the tiniest of hope. But I paid him no attention and asked my father-in-law, who didn't say a word. So, no need to worry about. I'll stand by you, Mariel. His words gave some hope. And so, husband and his sister have fallen to the wayside in a